So my question is about government interfering with parents in their taking how they raise their kids and take care of their kids. And I know there's a line there, obviously, when it comes to some kind of physical abuse. So the thing that interests me is the case of really religious parents who would deny some kind of medical treatment to their kids. And I remember a case in the news maybe 10, 12, some years ago, where there was a legal battle between a religious parents who wanted to deny their kid a life or death treatment on religious grounds. The kid would have died for sure if they hadn't. And I believe the government intervened. And at the time when I heard that, I was glad. But that doesn't mean that it's the right principle, because I felt that way. I think in that case, because it's not that they're actively hurting the kid or killing the kid. They're just saying, no, because of our religion, we're going to deny this intervention, this medical intervention. So yeah. I still tend to think that the government did the right thing. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's a very dangerous line, and it's a tricky line to define. And it's good that it went to the court system. That is, that a judge made the decision, that it wasn't just obvious that the government gets to decide, because I think a judge would have to make the decision on a case-by-case basis. You could come up with some principles, but with medicine, because there's such a difficult line there. So clearly, if the treatment is life or death, then yeah, I mean, then it's pretty simple. If it's not quite life or death, or if the treatment is really risky, then it becomes more complicated. So yeah. I definitely think the state's responsibility to ultimately be the protector of the child's rights needs to play into this. And you could count it as child abuse for certainly if it's a clear-cut case where if the child doesn't get treated, then they die, then yes, I think it's good that the government intervenes in cases like that. And the religious liberty, I mean, what sickens me is if there were secular parents and they said, Mother Earth spoke to us, or maybe Mother Earth it would work, but the gremlins spoke to us and told us that we shouldn't treat our children, or I saw it in the crystals, right? Then nobody would object to the government forcing them. But because it's some religious sect, supposedly religious freedom. No, religious freedom is the freedom of ideas. It's not just religion, whether the founding fathers exactly articulated right or not. Religious people don't have special rights. They don't have special ability to abuse other people in the name of religion. So this would definitely be child abuse. And exactly where the line is, I don't know. That's what a good legal system would have to be involved in, would have to be engaged with.
Yeah, actually, I was raised in a religion that was not too different from that. We weren't allowed to get vaccinations, and I never saw a doctor until I was like, I don't know how old, maybe in my early teens. And I have no sympathy for that, and that mentality that religion occupies some privileged position in America really sickens me.
I agree with you. Agree completely. How did you? But I find it, inspiring that you got out of that, right? And I'm
very proud.
You should be. You should be. And I'm wondering if you'd say something about how.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I wanted to understand, because kids have, they're curious about things. So I remember when I was little asking some questions like, how come all these miracles like the sea parting and all those kinds of things, how come stuff like that constantly happens in the Bible and then it doesn't happen now? Like, why doesn't it happen anymore? And, my mother has some kind of a story for it. And, and then one time I thought maybe, well, the adults, they know so much more than me. So they must know somehow that there's proof that there's a God. They know it somehow. They seem to know. So I asked my dad, who was actually a minister in this religion, how do we know? How do we know there's a God? And he said, really unsatisfyingly, you've got to have faith. And so I asked my mother one time, how do we know that the Bible isn't just like made up? And how do we know? And the answer was that that's a horrible thing to say. You should never say something like that. And besides, it says in the Bible that we're supposed to have faith.
You're a difficult child.
Just
Great.
Asking questions.
Yep.
Asking questions, and it's really hard. Something that has nothing to do with reality is completely opposed to reality. It's really hard to contain that and prevent reality from getting in, as long as somebody's at least attempting to think about things a little bit.
Yeah.
So, it's just a series of progression, I would say.
And I'd say it's those kind of questions, to relate to your previous question. It's those types of questions that you ask is what builds a self or a soul.
Yeah.
It's and you're doing that as a child. All of us did it as children, otherwise we wouldn't be here. We did it as children, building up to having a soul or a self. And all those co-religionists never ask the questions, and they don't have a soul. They talk about soul a lot in religion, but they have none, because they're just unthinking. It's
because they're told that it's a horrible, evil thing to ask. Yep. Or to even have a thought. Like, I was taught that if you even have a thought, like, God reads all your thoughts all the time, and any thought you have that isn't, I don't know, consistent with the religion, he'll know. And that's a sin. When you've got this totalitarian mindset that literally you can't even have, that your own mind is not a private place. You can't think, it's not, if you, I can understand a little bit why people don't get past that. I mean, not really, because at some point you're going to look at reality.
So they're terrified. It's fear.
They're terrified. Yeah. They're terrified. Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what one of the things that as a little kid, I think I got and rejected. And I rejected religion to some extent because I thought this fear stuff was just stupid. So a God that would do that was just, it just didn't make any sense. And for me, it was a lot easier because I, even though I was exposed to a lot of religion, my family was it was secular. I mean, they were nominally religious, but they were secular. So I was exposed to religion in school because I went to a very religious school when I was first 2 grades. And then that's the period when I became an atheist was when, I just, while I was going to a very religious school, because it made no sense to me. And I can't remember the exact process, but I remember that this idea that God was like judging you on every thought, and I was a kid and I was supposed to be afraid of this, that I thought was just absurd and ridiculous, and turned me off. So I was a rebel even back then.
And to begin with, I wonder if I can ask you to capsulize. I know this is difficult. Can I ask you to capsulize your philosophy? What is Randism?
First of all, I do not call it Randism, and I don't like that name. I call it Objectivism.
All right.
Meaning a philosophy based on objective reality. Now let me explain it as briefly as I can. First, my philosophy is based on the concept that reality exists as an objective absolute. That man's mind, reason, is his means of perceiving it. And that man needs a rational morality. I am primarily the creator of a new code of morality which has so far been believed impossible, namely a morality not based on faith,
On
or
faith.
not on faith, not on arbitrary whim, not on emotion, not on arbitrary edict, mystical or social, but on reason, a morality which can be proved by means of logic, which can be demonstrated to be true and necessary.
All right. All right.
Now, may I define what my morality is?
All right.
Because this is merely an introduction. My morality is based on man's life as a standard of value. And since man's mind is his basic means of survival, I hold that if man wants to live on earth and to live as a human being, he has to hold reason as an absolute, by which I mean that he has to hold reason as his only guide to action, and that he must live by the independent judgment of his own mind, that his highest moral purpose is the achievement of his own happiness, and that he must not force other people, nor accept their right to force him, that each man must live as an end in himself and follow his own rational self-interest.
May I?
All right, before we go on, reminder, please like the show. We've got 163 live listeners right now, 30 likes. That should be at least 100. I figure at least 100 of you actually like the show. Maybe there are like 60 of the Matthews out there who hate it, but at least the people who are liking it, you know, I want to see a thumbs up. There you go. Start liking it. I want to see that go to 100. All it takes is a click of a thing, whether you're looking at this. And you know, the likes matter. It's not an issue of my ego. It's an issue of the algorithm. The more you like something, the more the algorithm likes it. So, you know, and if you don't like the show, give it a thumbs down. Let's see your actual views being reflected in the likes. But if you like it, don't just sit there. Help get the show promoted. Of course, you should also share. And you can support the show at JeronBrooksShow.com/support, or on Patreon or Subscribestar or Locals, and show your support for the work, for the value hopefully you're receiving from this. And of course, don't forget, if you're not a subscriber, even if you just come here to troll, or even if you're here like Matthew to defend Marx, then you should subscribe, because that way you'll know when to show up. You'll know what shows are on, when they're on. You'll get notified, right? So, yes, like, share, subscribe, support. Like, share, subscribe, support. There you go. Easy. Do one or all of those, please.